Okay, good morning, good evening, everybody. I keep saying that, I'm sorry. You still have many hours before you get to morning. Okay, so I put up on the side.
Many hours before morning, is that were you meaning to refer to the situations that we're in?
No metaphor. Just
I thought you were talking metaphorically.
no.
Okay,
That's a whole separate issue.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I'll be quiet now.
Okay. So I put up on the side, as you can see, I put up the mishna. The mishna tonight is really a very, very straightforward mishna. The mishna is Rabbi Lezer Kafar. It's chapter 4, Mishnah 21. If anybody's keeping track and noticing, you will see that in fact we have one more Mishnah. This is till we finish the chapter, which is a pretty amazing accomplishment. 4 down, 2 to go. That's a big thing. But anyway, we'll talk more about that next week in Yetz Hashem. The Mishnah says as follows: Rabbi Lezer Kapar says, "Hakina v'taiva v'kavod motzinas adam min olam." That kina, which is jealousy, taiva, which is lust, and kavod, which is a desire for honor, motzinas adam min olam, take a person from this world. So the problems with this statement in the Mishnah is, first of all, that while these are bad, jealousy is a bad thing, desire for honor is a bad thing, lusting after things is a bad thing. We know also that the way to tell a person, we say kiso, kaso, koso, that, see where a person is with their own honor, see where a person is with their own indulgences, and see where a person is with their own jealousies. That's the way you can tell really the makeup of a person. We understand that. That's that's relatively obvious, and we understand these are pretty bad things. A person, we're going to talk more about it tonight, obviously, but a person who's a jealous person, a person who is a lustful person, a person who is always desiring their cover, their honor, those are pretty bad midos. As a matter of fact, they're such bad midos that we say that the root of every bad characteristic that a human being has, every characteristic is in the recipe is a measure of one of these three. In other words, that you take a little bit of A, a little bit of B, a little bit of C, and depending on how much is mixed in of each one of these components is going to depend on what kind of negative characteristics a person is going to have. And that the root of all negative characteristics, right? You see a person who's a selfish person. You see a person who's a nosy person. You see a person who is a self-centered person. You see a person who's an angry person. It doesn't make a difference. You look at any negative trait of a person, and its roots are in the ingredients called kina, taiva, and kavod. Now, not only that, we know that in the temple, we were there was this is actually 2 weeks ago's parasha, but that there was it was last week's parasha that we were commanded to light the menorah, and when we were commanded to light the menorah, in front of the menorah was 3 steps, and those 3 steps, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would have to go up on top of those 3 steps, and then he would light the menorah. Now the menorah wasn't very tall. The menorah was short enough that an average sized Kohen did not need any steps to approach the menorah in order to be able to light the menorah. I don't know how many people remember, but in Parshas Tetzaveh, which is the parsha that deals with the making of the clothes of the Kohen Gadol. So Linda Niemann al Shalom, she used to, in her bulletin, she had a picture of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, wearing the garments, and we made it together and we identified each of the garments. But as the years went on and more things went into the bulletin, so then this Kohen Gadol, the picture of the Kohen Gadol shrunk, and eventually it became a Kohen troll. Right? He wasn't such a Gadol. He looked more like a troll. He got sort of shrunk in this way and pulled out that way. So he looked very funny. But he wasn't a troll. He wasn't short, the Kohen Gadol. And if that's the case, that he wasn't short, so then what did he need steps for? So our rabbis tell us that we know that the lighting of the menorah is really symbolic of the turning on of the lights inside of a human being. We say that the menorah is a symbol of the Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral Torah. That we know that where the menorah sat in the temple is that it sat right outside of the Kodesh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies. Inside the Holy of Holies was the Ark. And that Ark contained in it the 10 Commandments and Moshe's original Torah. That represented Torah Shebechsav, the written Torah. The menorah that was sitting literally outside the entrance to that inner chamber to the Holy of Holies represented the Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral Torah. Because what is a Torah Shabbat Peh? What does the Torah Shabbat Peh do? It illuminates. And what is it illuminating? It's illuminating the way, showing you the way to go. That's what light does. And therefore the menorah, which was the light, that was the illumination of the Torah. And that's what the Torah Shabbat Peh does. The oral Torah illuminates. Without the oral Torah, you'd have no idea how to keep Shabbos. You have no idea how to put up a mezuzah. You'd have no idea how to daven. You have no idea how to do a thing. You wouldn't even know how to make a pair of tefillin. There is nothing in the written Torah that you'd be able to do straight from the instructions in the written Torah. Most of the instructions, most of the details of anything that we have is we get it from the oral Torah. Even our Pesach Seder, all of the instructions and details of the Pesach Seder are all coming from the oral Torah. And therefore, the illumination, the light that comes from the oral Torah becomes critical for our existence. And therefore, if you want to acquire Torah, you want to have what we call Torah Chaim, you want to have living Torah, you want it to be a part of your life, what's the ingredient that's most important in order for you to be able to be koneh, in order for you to be able to buy, to acquire Torah, to make an attachment to Torah? So if I were to ask this in the street, right, do one of these kind of interview things, walk around to people and just say, hold the mic up in their faces and say, what would you say is the most important ingredient for a person to be successful in Torah? So you're going to get all kinds of answers. Mostly, that you have the ability to be able to sit and to concentrate and that you're a smart person and that your mind is open and blah blah blah. I don't think any of that is true. I think that the most important ingredient is actually 3 ingredients that you have to have. You have to be able to step away from yourself. You have to have a good character, because without a good character, it's impossible not only not to acquire Torah but not to live by Torah. Part of what a good character does for a person is a good character allows a person to be able to see outside of themselves. Good character traits allows a person to be able to accept authority. Good character traits allows a person to be able to consider that they might actually be wrong. All of those are necessary ingredients to actually receive the Torah. To make a kinyan on Torah, to make an acquisition of Torah and a connection to Torah, you actually need a good character. And that's why God stuck 3 steps in front of the menorah. Because what God was teaching us is that if you want to acquire Torah, you want to light, you want to put the lights on in the world, the first thing you have to do is you have to step over kina, jealousy. You have to step over taiva. You have to step over lusts, which we're going to, again, talk about in a few minutes. And you have to step over honor, your own sense of kavod, your own sense of honor. You have to fix the roots of your character traits, because without fixing the roots of your character traits, you will ultimately have no kinyan HaTorah. Once you step over those 3 steps, now you can go and you can light the menorah and the lights will burn bright. But you have to first step over those 3 steps. That's why it's not needed functionally. It's needed spiritually. It's needed to show us it's a symbolic thing. Just like the menorah is symbolic, the steps in front of it are symbolic. To show us that to be able to light the menorah, to light Torah, to light our lives up with Torah, we have to fix ourselves as people. Okay, I think that once a person hears about these 3 things, kina, taiva, kavod, it makes a lot of sense to a person. Of course, lust, jealousy, desire for honor. If I think of all the things that are going, that are going awry in my life, all the things people don't like about me, all the things I don't like about myself, they can all be stapled into, connected to kina, taiva, v'kavod. And if that's the case, so then what's this Mishnah telling me? You guys know we've talked about this enough times that I'm a firm believer and teacher of anything that is inside of Pirkei Avos is something that we could not necessarily have understood on our own, or that we need to be reminded of because it's so fundamental. There has to be some kind of message in the teachings of the sages that would that would make it that this teaching would be included in Pirkei Avos. This is not just Ben Franklin's best, right? These are not just epigrams for the wise or epigrams from the rich and famous. That's not what Pirkei Avos is. Pirkei Avos is fundamental teachings. What's the fundamental teaching about this kind of type of kavod that I would not have known or understood beforehand? So I'll tell you, there was a great rabbi by the name of Rabbi Kiva Eger, 1800s. He had a grandson, Shlomo Eger, who wanted to learn Hasidus. It was in the time of the proliferation of great sages, of great Hasidic sages, and he wanted to go learn from the Kotzker Rebbe. To a Litvak, to a person who was from the Litvische Derech, the more yeshiva derech, that was something that was an anathema. The Hasidic approach wasn't considered just another approach; it was actually considered a negative approach. So he's not going to stand though in the way of his son's desire, to go and to learn Torah. So Reb Leibler Eger went to go and learn by the Kotzker. His father was very displeased. Reb Shlomo Eger was very displeased, but nevertheless he went. Comes back after 6 months, and his father said to him, "Nu, what did you learn from the Kotzker?" So he looks at his father and he says, "Ich hab gelernt," he says, "I learned that der Eibishter führt die Welt, that God runs the world." He said it with like stars in his eyes, like an amazement, a wonder. So his father looks at him and says to him, "That's what you learned in 6 months? That God runs the world?" He calls over the girl that works in the kitchen. It's a young girl. And he says to the girl, "Who runs the world?" She looks at him and she says, "What do you mean, who runs the world?" She says, "Everybody knows God runs the world." So Shlomo Eger turns to Rabbi Eger and he says to him, "What are you talking about?" He says, "She spent no time in Kotsk. She's never went to the Kotzker Rebbe, and yet she knows it. She knows that God runs the world. It took you 6 months to learn that from the Kotzker, that the Eibishter führt die Welt, that God runs the world." So Reb Leibler Eger turns to his father and he says to him, "No, you don't understand." He says, "Sie sagt über ich weiß." He says, "She said it, but I know it. I understand it." In other words, it's not just about saying the words, the Eibishter führt die Welt, that God runs the world. It's about knowing it in the depths of your existence. And that's a game changer. To say it is the way the average person lives by it. But to feel it inside, that's a very different thing. And I think that that's why this concept is repeated multiple times in Pirkei Avos, in different iterations, that kina, taiva, v'kavod, that jealousy, lust, and a desire for honor, motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam, can destroy a person's life, because we need not just to say it, but we need to understand it. We need to know it in our depths, because this is the root of the misery that we cause ourselves, and it is the root, ultimately, of the happiness and the joy that a person can get out of life. What exactly is it that a person needs to know? The first thing that a person needs to know is Motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam. What does that mean? It takes a person out of this world. It means that it makes your life miserable. It means that it turns sweet sugar water into bitter tasting water. It takes every great moment in your life and it sucks the energy out of it, and it turns every single thing into poison. Okay, that's a good thing to know. But you know what else that statement is saying? Motzian es ha'adam min ha'olam, that it takes a person from the world. It means that it's motzian es ha'adam, it escorts you min ha'olam, from the world. That means that if it doesn't get put into check in your youth, it's going to stay with you, and it is going to be more difficult to get rid of later on in life. And if you don't, at some point in your life, get rid of it and climb above it, then motzian es ha'adam min ha'olam, it's going to walk with you into the grave. I was once sitting at a bat mitzvah, and it was a small bat mitzvah. And the father of the bat mitzvah, a wonderful fellow, very funny person, was going around to all of his friends, and he was praising each one of them. And he gets to a certain person, and he says to that person, who was a person who had built himself up from the bootstraps more than once, had lost his fortunes, rebuilt his fortunes. At this particular point, I think he was very down, but he had pulled himself away from his friends because he was so involved in his business and so involved in making his millions. So the guy looks at him, and he said it as a joke, and everybody laughed when he said it, but he said that he's going to be the richest guy in the cemetery. And what he was joking about this guy is that this guy was just so into his money that was, that in the cemetery he's going to be called the richest guy, but he's not going to be able to take it with him. There's nothing he can do with his money. What he didn't realize, though, that he was saying over this mishna, that when a person lives their life with that kind of emptiness, the only place that emptiness is going to be, it's not going to have any kind of kiyum. It's not going to exist past the person. It's going to be motzian es ha'adam min ha'olam. It's going to be the thing that takes you out of the world, and it escorts you out of the world. It's going to be stuck with you. And in the truth, when a person lives this way, that's the way he's going to be remembered. When a person lives their life with kinataiva kavod, a person lives their life with jealousy, with honor, with a desire for honor, and with lust, which we'll see exactly what those three things are in a moment. But when a person lives their life that way, so then that's the way they're going to be remembered. A person would love to have it in their lifetime that their eulogy is actually consistent with who they were. I can promise you, everybody here is going to have a beautiful eulogy. That's not the kunst. It's not a trick. The trick is that the eulogy should actually be a reflection. There are halachos of eulogies. You're not allowed to exaggerate too much when you say a eulogy. You can't say things that are patently not true. Okay, but you want to say something nice about a person, and unfortunately, let's say a person's lived a terribly, terribly empty life. So you twist a little bit. You put a magnifying glass to the one nice thing that a person did in their lifetime, and that becomes like the whole thing about their life. Whatever, you have to do things. And great, the eulogy is great. Everybody remembers them. Everybody cries at their eulogy, and it does its trick. That's not what your goal is. Your goal is not to have a nice eulogy. Your goal is that the eulogy should be consistent. It should be a reflection of who the person really is. Motzian es ha'adam min ha'olam means that this is what takes you out of the world. Not just it ruins your life, but it escorts you. It starts at the beginning of your life, and it escorts you through your life. And at the end of the day, that's what's left after the dust settles, literally. Because you look at a child, you put two children in a room, and what are those two children doing? They're fighting. And what are they fighting about? They're fighting about a little truck. And why are they fighting about the little truck? Because Johnny is saying, that's my truck. And Bobby is saying, that's my truck. And then Johnny gets the truck. And Bobby starts to cry. Because why does he have the truck? Why can't I have the truck? And that's normal behavior for a 3-year-old. for a 4-year-old, but then it starts to grow with us. And a teenager, he'll never grab something out of somebody else's hands. He'll never cry that he's jealous. Then how come he got 2 cookies and I only got 1 cookie? And how come he got so much and I only got so little? He's smarter than that. But his desire for the clothes of another person, the computers, the iPads, the toys, if they've got it, I've got to have it. The jealousy, it just gets a little bit more sophisticated and grows a little bit. And then he becomes a young adult and he looks at the cars that his friends are driving and he looks what other people have. And he wants that also. And then he gets a little bit older, presumably more mature. And now he starts to look at other people's houses and other people's kitchens and other people's furniture and other people's vacations. And he pushes himself because he wants that also. And he's also beset with jealousy. And then he becomes an older person and he becomes jealous of other people's health, of other people's retirement plans, other people's nachas from their children. If it's not put in check at some point in our lives, so then it's Meitzianis Adam in Olam. It escorts us from the day we walk into this world until the day we walk out of it. The Mesil Yesharim says that jealousy is senseless. Because a person who's mekan, a person who's jealous over what other people has, is not marviach klum. He gets nothing. V'gam lo mafsid b'mishu miskanabo. He doesn't get what he wanted, and he doesn't get it out of the hands of the person that has it. So he's jealous of what somebody else has. He would feel better if they don't have it, but his jealousy is not going to do that. It's not going to destroy that. And it's not going to get him what he wants. And therefore, it's senseless, and says the Mesil Yesharim, it's destructive. Because not only does it rip apart a person's life, but jealousy has the ability to rip apart families. That when people are jealous, if you analyze it very, very carefully, why did 2 people hate each other? Very, very often what you'll find is at the root of it is a jealousy. At the root of it is when one person sees in the other person something that they want, something that they wish they had, rather than just accept that I don't have this, or use it as a motivator to acquire it, and talking about a character trait, talking about some kind of internal acquisition, rather than to do that, I look at the other person and I say, I hate you. Because that's the only way I can deal with the fact that I don't have that. I wasn't successful at it. And I never acquired it, never got it for myself. Not only is it senseless and destructive, but it makes us totally irrational. There's a story in Tanakh of a fellow by the name of Yerovam ben Nevat. You remember King Solomon had a son by the name of Rechavam. Rechavam took over the nation. We spoke about him. Oh, it was in it was in a different chapter. But we did speak about this when we said that you should listen to the. Oh no! I'm sorry. We talked about this last week when we talked about the listening to the youngsters, not listening to the oldsters, right? Listening to the oldsters, not the youngsters, and that the advice of the oldsters is building, and the advice of the youngsters is destruction. We spoke that whole thing. So this Yerovam ben Nevat, who was the fellow who led the rebellion against the King Solomon's son, Rechavam, who wanted to keep charging taxes, and his advisors told him not to do it. He didn't listen, and the kingdom got split. Remember, 350 years, there were 2 kingdoms of Israel. 350 years. How many people knew that piece of history? That's an incredible thing. And the reason why it stayed for so long is because of the basis of what happened. Kingdom splits, and now a dilemma happens. The first Yontif comes. So on Yontif, every Jew has to go to Yerushalayim, including the new king of the kingdom of North, who is not one of the kings of the Davidic line of the Davidic dynasty. And therefore, he's not really a king in the Jewish people, because he's of this ersatz, funky community of the kingdom of the North, which is not really the kingdom of the Jewish people. In the temple, the king was allowed to sit. He's the only person that was allowed to sit in the temple. And now it was going to be a dilemma, because there are two kings. There's the real king from the Davidic line, and then there's this new king called Yerovam. And Yerovam said, I can't go to the temple, because if I go to the temple, they're not going to let me sit. It's going to be a degradation to my position. I'm going to be embarrassed. And therefore, he put up guards, made it prohibited for people to go to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, Kodesh, the holy Jerusalem, where this is all people knew. Every Yontif, you went to Yerushalayim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. And he made it prohibited under the penalty of death. If you crossed over this border, you can never come back to the land. And therefore, people couldn't go to Jerusalem. He, in order to be able to remedy the situation, because he had to make a temple for them, so he built two temples for them, and he made holidays for them. He put golden calves in the temple. He introduced idolatry into the Jewish people. And he's a pretty rotten fellow. God comes to him and says to him, "Bo netayel b'Gan Eden." He says to him, "Come, let's go walk in Gan Eden." In other words, I'm giving you a chance to do tshuva. Giving you a chance to do tshuva. Look at the destruction you brought to the Jewish people. Look at the terrible things you brought. I'm giving you a chance to do tshuva. And you and King David and I are going to walk in the Garden of Eden. V'ani v'ato ben Yishai netayel b'Gan Eden. Wow. Wow. Can you imagine that? You committed the worst crimes, like the most heinous crime in the Torah. The most heinous crime in the Torah, which we say, Yarek val Yavar, that you have to let yourself die rather than transgress, is idolatry, is one of the big three. He committed idolatry. He did terrible things. He split the Jewish people in two. That's so fundamentally wrong. And yet God said to him, we can do tshuva. What a God we have. Isn't God amazing? So what's the first question he asked God? Let's hear it one more time. God says to him that, come, walk with me. He says, Chazar bach, do tshuva, va'ani va'ata uben Yishai, me, you, and King David, nitayel b'Gan Eden, will walk together in Gan Eden. So Yerovam ben Nevat, given this $1 million opportunity, turns to God and he says to him, me, Barosh, who's walking in the front of the parade? Who's the ringmaster? Who's the leader, God? And he wasn't giving God a choice to say him. Was it me or King David? And when he found out it wasn't going to be him, it was going to be King David, he said, no, thank you. No, thank you. Because of his jealousy for the Melech Yisrael, for the king of the Jewish people, for David Melech Yisrael, he could not allow himself to get over that. That jealousy has the ability to be able to turn us into irrational human beings. If it's so bad, if it's something that's so destructive, then why are we so addicted to it? So I think that what I'm saying now is critical to know, because I think it's the first step towards actually dealing with our jealousies. If I were to ask the 16 of us, are we jealous people? Most of us would say, not really. Not really jealous. Listen to this. Moshe Rabbeinu comes up to heaven and he sees a battle going on between God and the angels. And the battle that's going on is that God wants to give the Torah to the Jewish people. The angels are saying, why are you taking it away from us, giving it to the humans? The humans are fickle. They're not trustworthy. What are you giving it to the human beings for? So God turns to Moshe and he says to Moshe, answer them. Answer them. What would you say to them? Why am I giving the Torah to the human beings? So Moshe turns to them very simply and asks the following question. Do you have parents? The angels look at him like, you're nuts. No, God created us. Then why do you need a Torah? The Torah says, honor your mother and father. You don't have mothers and fathers. What do you need a Torah for? Moshe looks at them and says, are you jealous? So what kind of jealousy? We don't have that. It's not wired inside of us. So Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, what do you need a Torah for? Lo sachmai. Don't be jealous of each other. What do you need that for? If you don't have jealousy inside of you, then what do you need that commandment for? What was Moshe Rabbeinu saying to them? What was he saying to them? If you don't have parents, you don't need a Torah. If you're not jealous, then you don't need a Torah, because Moshe Rabbeinu understood that jealousy and every other negative thing that is commanded, that we are commanded not to do in the Torah, is because it is part of our nature. And that's why we have a Torah to guide us. Barasi Yetzer Hara, God created an evil inclination. Ubarasi Torah Tavlin, and I created the Torah to be its antidote. I created the Torah to be its guide, to take those negative characteristics, those potentially negative characteristics, and to protect them, to guide them, to shape them into something positive. What Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, and he was declaring it not for the angels, but that we should know this, that it is part and parcel of our makeup. It's in our genetics. And how did it become part of our genetics? Because from the Garden of Eden, from Gan Eden, it became a part and a parcel of us. Why did the Nachash, the snake, do what he did against Adam? The reason that he did it is because he was jealous of the honor that Adam was given by the Malachim, by the angels, and by God. And therefore, the whole first event of the Torah was based on jealousy. But in truth, Adam had it also. Because jealousy is desire for things that don't belong to you. And that's exactly what Adam HaRishon was all about. He wanted things that he couldn't have. And he gave this over in the genes to his children. Cain was jealous. Hevel was also jealous. Hevel ended up getting killed, but he was jealous. He was jealous of the idea that his brother Cain had, and he did it one better than him. Cain came up with an idea that he wanted to give a gift to God. Where did anybody know to give a gift to God from? And Hevel looks in and says, wow, what a great idea, give a gift to God. But I'm going to go one better than my brother. My brother brought regular stuff, I'm going to bring the best stuff. That jealousy that was in the very air of the Garden of Eden, that went into Adam HaRishon, that was in the existence of Adam, manifested itself in his children, in Cain and in Hevel. And it manifests itself in us also. And if it's true that it's something that is basic to us, so then it's something that we need to remove from ourselves, and we're obligated to figure out how to conquer that jealousy. The truth is, taiva, lust, a desire, that's also something that came to us from the Garden of Eden. And kavod, a desire for honor, is also something that came to us from the Garden of Eden. The snake was filled with jealousy. Chava was filled with taiva. She looked at that fruit and she was grabbed by it. She had a desire for it. She had a lust for it. It didn't matter to her that she was commanded not to eat it. Her lust was greater. Her desire for it, her passion for it was greater than her intellectual understanding that this is wrong. And Adam HaRishon was into his kavod, into his honor. He turns to God, and when God says to him, did you eat from the tree I told you not to eat from? If you look carefully in the Torah, he says, I ate from the tree and I will continue to eat from the tree. Ain't nobody going to tell me what to do. Kina, taiva, v'kavod is something that was inculcated in us. It was the roots, where the challenge was there from the very beginning of the creation of human being. And therefore, our obligation is to work on controlling it. Where does it come from? If each one of these is so important, why weren't they their own mishna? Why didn't we have a mishna about kina? And why didn't we have a mishna about taiva? And why didn't we have a mishna about kavod? Why not address each one of them separately? Because ultimately, kina, taiva, the kavod are centered around the same thing. They're centered around me. I'm jealous of you because I am focused on me. I'm desirous of things. I'm an impulsive person, always looking to please myself, always looking for what's going to make me happy, doing the thing that's going to bring me comfort, because I'm focused on me. Kavod, I feel it when you step on me. I feel it when that my honor has been damaged. I need people outside of me to build me up because I'm focused on me. We think that being focused on me, okay, kinataiva kavod, fine, it manifests itself this way. It manifests itself in so many incredibly dangerous ways. You know, I've been making a big deal the past couple of weeks in the whole race relations thing. I spoke about it in my parsha, in my pre-Shabbos stuff. I spoke about it on Sunday night. I've talked about it in classes. The thing that's making me the craziest about it is that it is a manifestation of kina, taiva, the kavod on every side of the argument, because it's people focused on themselves and not focused on the other. You know how you can tell that you're focused on yourself? When somebody does something wrong to you and all you see is what they've done. For 15 years, I've been plagued with a person who all they could see is what the other person did and can't factor in their own involvement and engagement in something. When the world lives by that kind of principle, that I have to worry, I can see you, I can see what you did to me, I can see how bad you are, but can't stop for a minute and say, what do I need to do to fix myself? What do I need to do to make myself better, to improve myself? Then the world self-destructs the way it is, the way we are watching it self-destruct now. Because everybody is focused on their part, on themselves, on what was done, their victimization, as opposed to taking responsibility for their lives and saying, how can I focus outside of myself? How can I see you when I look at the world and not just see me when I look at the world? Kina v'taiva v'kavod is because as children, we weren't taught to look outside of ourselves. We weren't taught to focus on the outside. It was all about self. It was all about ich. It was all about me. It was all about mine. It was all about developing myself. And it wasn't about this external vision, this external look, this ability to be able to see other people. And that's the first step ingredient that a person needs to fix the roots of jealousy, the roots of taiva, and the roots of kavod is to step away from being selfish and self-centered. The program, the more we give, the less we're focused on ourselves. The more we're engaged with other people, the more we consider the life of other people, the more we consider the health of other people, the more we consider the value of other people, then the less jealous we are, the less focused on our own honor we are, the less focused we're on our self-pleasure. But the three of them, the root of them is our focus on self. If a person you want a beautiful life, you want the next 15, 20, 30, 40 years of your life to be beautiful, step outside of yourself and see the world through the eyes of other people. Not what I can get, but what can I give? And even when it's difficult for me to give, what can I give? How can I consider your position in this? You know, I don't know if I said this over in one of my classes. I know I did say it over to a person here. I won't mention. They'll know what I'm talking about though. But I had an experience that helped me step outside of myself and to remember. It was just another poignant reminder that you have to focus on others and their feelings, and it's not so simple to step outside of yourself. I'm now a balabas. You know, I am no longer. I don't have a shul. I sit in the back. I'm a congregant, and I saw something from the eyes of a congregant. Maybe another time I'll share the whole story. It's too long for now. I can't believe what time it is. Time flies when you're having fun. But I was able to see an issue that I was not insensitive to, and I'd like to believe that I was relatively sensitive to the issue in my lifetime. I did make mistakes in it, but I was able to feel it from the other end, and I was able to feel the pain of it, which I perhaps never was able to feel before, because I was able to see it not from within, from my position. I was able now to see it from somebody else's position, from the position of a congregant, and it looked completely different, and I understood the pain that was associated with it. A lot of times what we need to do is we need to consider to put ourselves in the other position and to understand, to step out of ourselves and understand the other position in order to be able to deal with our kina, our taiva, and our kavod. If they are motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam, if they take a person out of this world, they render life impossible to live and impossible to have joy from. So then flipping them, stepping outside of them, so then that is only going to bring incredible joy and happiness to our lives. And I think that that's why it's in the Mishnah, because it's so incredibly fundamental that we have to get it like a cold glass of water thrown in our faces. We have to recognize that motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam, that it carries us, it's with us. It's that same jealousy of two 3-year-olds in a room being jealous of each other's toys. That started then, and at 50, 60, 70, 80, hasn't necessarily left us. But it can leave us in 1 second. All we have to do is just walk through the other side of the door and see the world from somebody else's perspective, step outside of ourselves, and it's amazing what we can accomplish. Okay, my thoughts for tonight.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Okay, it is my absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Everybody
Thank
should have a
you.
wonderful
Thank
night.
you.
And
Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Thank you.
Hashem, we'll see you all soon.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is Pam. You gave the story of the fellow that went to learn from the Hasidic rabbi, and that he came home, right?
Right.
And so how does that relate to this theme? Is that somehow?
No, the reason I brought the story in was that he what he was saying is that I don't just know it externally, I know it internally. And that's what the Kinevatav Kavod knows. This whole Mishnah, you could say it, you could say, "Oh God, these are such terrible things," but really we have to get to the level of feeling inside how terrible these are. That's I was just talking about the emotional attachment to the idea, not the Hasidic idea.
Got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Wonderful
pleasure.
talk.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Rabbi.
God bless you.